Alicent Hightower is such a fascinating character and pretty different from her book depiction, and maybe that's a problem. So far, added characterization includes a complicated and enduring relationship with Rhaenyra, precarious interplay of power and lack thereof, and as of Season 2, Episode 3, Alicent took on one of the most frustrating and cliched genre tropes that frankly have us thinking about the last time someone went too far off a George R.R. Martin text. Uh-oh. There's a recognizable, if not overdone, trope common to lighter, often romantic fiction, and that is some form of easily avoidable miscommunication that hijacks the plot. One person misunderstands another person, and that drives them to act in silly or contrary ways, penultimately driving the two people apart.
So, I've got to break up a wedding, steal the bride's fella, and I haven't one clue how to do it.
If only they had a 1-minute conversation to clear up their misunderstandings. Then everything would be fine and everyone would be happy. Well, then the problem typically gets solved in the last 5 minutes and everyone is fine and reconciled. Big kiss, the end. Not everyone likes this trope in rom-com genre pieces, as it is often predictable and formulaic in how it plays out, but the device certainly has its place in some stories. Don't mistake me, I love a rom-com, but is House of the Dragon a rom-com? I argue the trope does not belong in the forefront of House of the Dragon and pulls the story in a much more frustrating direction unnecessarily when there are plenty of excellent story and character moments to mine in all other directions. You can't say this about all shows, but House of the Dragon lives in a rich world with striking characters, and there's tons of supplemental material to support it. What I'm saying is the avoidable misunderstanding trope has been taken to its extreme by Alicent's recent confrontation of the truth and avoidance of it in episode 3 of this season, and this track has the potential to not only derail her character, but a major part of what has been an incredible show itself. At the very least, it's frustrating as a viewer of quality programming.
It's too late, Rhaenyra.
Alicent.
I'm sorry, Rhaenyra. I have wasted the years since you were born, wanting for a son.
What really pushes me over the edge on this one is how deeply unnecessary the rom-com trope has been. We're just seeing it pushed to its escalation at this point. Absolutely none of this is present in Fire and Blood. Nothing like it happened in the acclaimed seasons of Game of Thrones. Sure, there were misunderstandings.
I have known Lord Walder since I was a girl. He would never harm me.
But not ones that were so easily avoidable and easy to clear up. There's a difference between drama and melodrama, like there was a difference between Shakespeare's tragedies.
To be or not to be.
And comedies.
Beatrice was in love with Signor Benedict?
Okay, maybe that's a step too far. Back to it. Fire and Blood is extremely different in some aspects from House of the Dragon. There are unreliable narrators who are absolutely absent in the show, and all the characters have good and bad qualities, creating a more nuanced and morally gray picture overall. In Season 2, Episode 3, Rhaenyra explicitly makes it clear to Alicent that her basis of usurping her throne is based on a misunderstanding of the Song of Ice and Fire as told by Viserys in Season 1.
You are that one.
And Alicent digs her heels in anyway, clinging to the logical basis of, well, nothing. And that's annoying. To be sure, this whole plot line of misunderstanding was devastating when it first occurred in Season 1, but to see it taken this far and to this high of a consequence doesn't feel consistent or earned. It feels like a cheaper brand of melodrama was injected into high-stakes realistic drama, and we're meant to treat it as equal in depth. While in Fire and Blood, Alicent pretty clearly believes Rhaenyra would kill her children to cement her claim to the throne, and that would have been perfectly acceptable rationale in another version of the show adaptation. That's not what they did. It is crystal clear from Alicent bowing out to Rhaenyra at dinner in season 1, saying that she would make a fine queen because that's what the king wanted. That is the most important factor for show Alicent, the king's will. The misunderstanding of Aegon the Conqueror's dream is also based on this. That's what she believed to have been the king's will. So now that she knows that it's not, what is she doing? And on that point, why, if this is the escalation of this added plotline, would we rely so heavily on a misunderstanding trope, a purple monkey dishwasher, if you will, at all?
Well, we'll show him, especially for that purple monkey dishwasher remark.
Viserys says this in season 1.
This secret, it's been passed from king to heir since Aegon's time. Now you must promise to carry it and protect it.
Which is why Alicent has no idea what it means when she hears it and misinterprets it. May I ask again, why? Who does it serve to have only 1 or 2 people in the whole world know this prophecy? Who is it protecting, especially if everyone loves and reveres the legend of Aegon the Conqueror? Wouldn't the song be more believable and enforceable if it's something people knew? Did he really dream the whole thing about uniting everyone against the White Walkers, and then dream the part that says, oh, and also this thing that will save everyone in Westeros from dying is a huge secret, so tell no one, for reasons? I doubt it. It's nice to tie the series together, but the prophecy, which was invented for the show, is a little too convenient a device and doesn't make enough sense as something people would logically do. Alicent's latest entry to this plot underlines how frustrating and ridiculous its inclusion really is.
Even now, news of Rhaenyra's monstrous crime spreads through the realm. The great houses falter. They cannot but come to our side.
I wish to spill blood, not ink.
I love the parts of stories that were summed up rather quickly in Fire and Blood, like Daemon went to Harrenhal and it wasn't really that bad for him and he wasn't affected by it, or Alice Rivers. But that ended up much more expanded in the show adaptation. Yes, excellent. Please do that more. Those are the moments that prove an adaptation was totally necessary. But when the show shoots off the page entirely, like with the added Song of Ice and Fire's secret oopsie miscommunication, causing a chain reaction of horrifying violence, that may be losing the plot too much. The track record between this show and Game of Thrones shows that writing new plot lines has historically not worked well, and I'm a little worried for the continued high integrity of this show if mismatched rom-com plots keep spelling major consequential focus. Look, I didn't want to bring it up, but I never want a show-specific Euron Greyjoy plot or King Bran ever again. Taking things tonally far from what George R.R. Martin wrote is just a bit worrisome, and seeing the strands of something like that here, an ill-placed rom-com trope, is a cause for concern. Maybe you don't remember how badly Game of Thrones lost its considerable goodwill and how hard it was to get some folks back on board for House of the Dragon, but I do. I'm still traumatized by what happened with Jaime.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
Drawing from a rom-com trope is also hugely unnecessary. There are many rich wells for the show to continue to draw from, which would be great in adaptation and make the world they've already built stronger. Daemon Targaryen is one of the most interesting characters George R.R. Martin has written, and reportedly his favorite. His complicated psyche has been very interesting to give more time, especially with him on his own in a weird castle with Alice Rivers, another extremely interesting character who just didn't have enough written about her in the book. Aemond and Aegon could also be explored deeply for their relationships, vulnerability, and self-awareness. Love the thread with Aemond and his lover/mother figure, and Aegon trying his best with the very few emotional and mental tools he has. All interesting. Miss Arya and Larys Strong have a lot of potential as manipulators. Corlys also has a lot more to him than we've glimpsed. Many introduced people who aren't nobility have potential. The Brackens, the Blackwoods, this generation of the Starks, I could go on and on. These subjects are all compelling and yet leave lingering questions from the pages of Fire and Blood that could be fleshed out more fully and with visual spectacle only the medium of a series could provide. I'm not saying the book is perfect. It's different. It's a book. It's also pretty short, and there are places where a few summed up sentences could turn into entire episodes. The brevity leaves room to expand, yes, but also the danger of room to go wrong when turning it into a larger on-screen version of itself. I'm going to bring up another epic fantasy adaptation that turned a short book into a whole huge thing. The Hobbit movie trilogy. Remember that? Remember the love triangle they made up for that? It sure wasn't enjoyable to watch, was it?
I could have anything down my trousers.
Or nothing.
I'm not going to talk about everything that went wrong there, but I will say injecting romantic melodrama into that story didn't play right because that's not what made Tolkien stories as beloved and lasting as they are. I would argue such elements wouldn't land if made central in this story either. Talented as all parties are, not everyone is Tolkien, and not everyone is George R.R. Martin.
I have sinned.
I do not wish to hear of it.
The story is ultimately about a family tearing itself apart, and an entire country. It should be heartbreaking, tense, and the stakes should feel real. When Rhaenyra mourns her children, her mother, her father, it has to strike real emotionality. When Alicent prays alone for people she shouldn't love, but does, it has to feel deeply humane. The stakes of what is essentially a Cold War, mutually assured destruction, but with dragons, need to be clear and dire. So far, these parts of the show have all landed, which I applaud them for. I really don't think this is the right genre for a central miscommunication between lovers plot point. While I like the idea for Alicent and Rhaenyra to play sorta star-crossed lovers in what has been a more platonic sense, the show is a bit too heavy for that well-worn trope more common to romance genre fiction to be believable and satisfying as a central element. In the miscommunication trope, characters can say things in the wrong way, or other characters can understand said things in the opposite way than they were intended. No problem. Actually, I don't look down on romance or rom-coms at all. They're fun. The miscommunication between lovers trope worked really well in all seasons of Bridgerton and the movie Anyone But You, not to mention any other films based on Shakespeare's comedies. But the misunderstanding trope as the foremost conflict is built to succeed in a lighter genre, where we can be okay with something totally avoidable causing the central conflict because the stakes are low and it's sure to be solved for a happy ending. Unfortunately, House of the Dragon is not a love story. The conflict is complicated, petty, and has high stakes. I don't think this is a spoiler, but it's clear from the opening narration of episode 1 that things won't be resolved with a hug, and this story isn't built to have a happy ending.
The only thing that could tear down the House of the Dragon was itself.
The misunderstanding trope is pretty cliched, but it does have its place. Unfortunately, that place probably isn't here as a central piece in the story that's been built so far. There are a lot of good ideas in the book that might be better points of focus than the show-invented melodrama. There is so much potential in Fire and Blood as a fantasy epic with a point of view, much of which has already been well used by House of the Dragon. Look, I really like House of the Dragon, and I just want the show to stay good and be consistent with its quality. That's pretty much my whole point. Thanks for watching. I'm Kim Horcher. Check out our other coverage of House of the Dragon here, and for all the entertainment news and analysis you need, you're already at the right place, IGN.com.